Welcome to Represent PA's first breakfast briefing of the new year and of an election year. Very excited to have you all here this morning. I'm very excited to be here. And today is really fun because we have three state senators who are joining us today from all from relatively the eastern half of Pennsylvania, but slightly different districts and with different backgrounds. And so I think what you're going to hear today is there's no one right background to get to be a state senator, to get to be a legislator, but the variety of skills and thinking processes and interests of the women that we support is really working to make Pennsylvania a reflective democracy, where our leaders look like and sound like all of us. And today you're going to get three different backgrounds. So that's another piece of reflective democracy is how did you come to be an elected official? So it's exciting for me to have them here today. I'm Christine Jacobs, and I am the executive director of Represent PA. And we also like to tell people, I don't remember if I put this one in the slides, this is our 10th year of victories. We started a little bit over 10 years ago, but our first victories were in 2015. And our first three victories were in three primaries and three special elections. And Leanne Kruger and Donna Bullock and Joanna McClinton were our three first victories in 2015. And they're all still in the state legislature and the House. They're amazing leaders. And as most of you probably know, Joanna McClinton is Speaker of the House. And she had a primary in 2015 up against several different people. She was the only woman running, and she got our support. And I like to believe that she's Speaker now because of us, and don't ever tell me that that isn't the case. So today, as part of our breakfast briefings as civic education, we like to tell you what's happening in Harrisburg and why you should care, why it affects your life. How can we connect the issues that our donors and our potential donors care about with the work of the Pennsylvania legislature? And we want to highlight the issues and the work being led by the women that we've supported. What happened in the legislature in 2023? We're very proud of a lot of the victories that we had. In particular, we had some Senate re-elects that were represent women. We also had a number of new legislators in 2022 elections who came in 2023 in the House, and we gained the House majority. And here's where we are. New leadership in the PA House has debated and passed over 200 bills to help Pennsylvanians, including gun control, including safe storage and improved background checks, minimum wage increases. Most of you have seen recently in the news that Pennsylvania is an island. Every other state around us, including, those liberal bastions of West Virginia and Ohio, all have much higher minimum wage requirements than we do in Pennsylvania. The House has passed these things, but where is the Senate on this? Our university funding, our state universities used to be well funded, and they're declining in the amount of money that they have available. Where's the money? And the interesting thing, and this is part of our civics education, is there are a lot of bills, many of these bills, that have passed the House and they go to the Senate and they never even get a hearing in a committee. They never even get discussed, and they do not get up and down votes. And that's because of the tight control that Senate leadership and Senate committee leadership have over what's going on in their committees. And guess what? We need at least to flip 3 seats in order to get hearings on these bills. We need 3. And that'll take us to a tie. Tie in the state legislature doesn't give us, it's not like the U.S. Senate, where the vice president can cast the vote to bring something and to pass something. It doesn't work that way in the state Senate. But a tie in the states, in the numbers of people, with the fact that the Democrats have the lieutenant governor, changes control of the committees. And changing the control of the committees gets action and gets some of these things heard. So who do we have appearing with us today? We've got Senator Amanda Cappelletti. She was elected for the first time to the Senate 4 years ago, and she's chair of the State Government Committee, and these are the other committees that she's on. These are a lot of pieces of Senator Cappelletti's background. I also like the fact that she had worked for Planned Parenthood. And we know that choice is always on the ballot. And we appreciate her strong voice on these issues. And oh, by the way, Senator Cappelletti has the distinction of being the first state senator in Pennsylvania to give birth while in office. And so I think that going right to reflective democracy, hey, a brand new mother, it's the first time we've had one of those, and it gives you a very different voice. Senator Carolyn Comitta from Chester County. She's chair of the Environmental Resources Committee. Well, the minority chair of the Environmental Resources Committee. We've supported her since her first run for the state legislature in 2016. And now we supported her 4 years ago when she ran for the Senate from Chester County. And Senator Judy Schwank, she's been there before represent. She has been in office longer. One of the things I'm going to ask her about is what it was like in the old days when there were only 2 women in the state Senate Democratic Caucus, and what's the difference for her now, some years later. But she also can talk, and this is fascinating to me, she's from Berks County, and she can talk about the Agricultural Committee and what she sees and what she would really like them working on. You may have seen Senator Schwank in the news recently. She's been, yes, the Pennsylvania Farm Show has been happening. And yes, she's been there, and she got the privilege of escorting our governor through there. So we can be sure and ask her about the butter sculptures later. Okay, and where did these 3 women come from? As I mentioned earlier, they're all from the eastern side of Pennsylvania. But you can see Berks County is the upper one, and we've got Berks, Montgomery, and Chester County all represented here. And this is where these state senators who are these are our 3 senators who are running for re-election this term. Off and get to today's discussion. So let's start with Senator Schwank, because you've got the seniority of our 3 elected senators now. Senator Schwank, what year were you first elected to the Senate? You mentioned there were 4 women and then 2 women in the Senate Democratic Caucus. What's different now?
Well, first of all, good morning, everybody, and thank you for welcoming me. And I'm going to apologize first for talking with you from my car. Like a busy senator, I have a program starting at 9:30 at one of our local libraries. So I'm sitting in my car, zooming in with you, but so delighted to be with all of you. So I was elected in 2011 in a special election. I was elected to replace an iconic state senator, who was, very, very popular. It was a very quick race, a very expensive race, but I was really able to prevail there, filled out the rest of his term, and have continued to run since then. So things have been dramatically different. I remember coming in, there were no women in leadership in the Senate Democratic Caucus. There were barely any women in the room, period. So it was, just kind of a culture shock for me, because I was used to being in environments that were much more diverse than in terms of gender representation. But it has changed dramatically. We have gained some amazing new female senators. Some of the ones that were here before are still here. So it's constantly evolving, but the things that we talk about are different than they used to be. We are in leadership now. I serve as administrator of the caucus, and at least 2 of our senators, female senators, sit at the head table too. So that is much different than it had been before. And I think the conversation is different. The just the tone of the conversation, as well as what we talk about, have dramatically changed. And this is all against the backdrop of how politics have changed in Pennsylvania as well. So, I'm looking forward again I know the 2 amazing ladies on this call will still be there, but I'm hopeful, one, gaining another amazing woman in a district in the middle of the state that we never had before, Patty Kim. Looks like that's going to be a very positive election for us. And that gets us closer
to what you were talking about, Christine, in terms of how we, make the difference in the state Senate and in the entire legislature in this Commonwealth.
Thank you. Okay, Senator Comitta. So what brought you to the state legislature, and how have you seen things change since both being in the House and in the Senate?
Thank you again. Good morning, Christine, and all of the people together today, and thanks to Represent. So what brought me to the state legislature, I had been a borough council member in the borough of Westchester for one term, 4 years. And then I ran for mayor, was an open seat, and I was elected mayor for almost two full terms. I was the first woman elected mayor of the borough of Westchester. And interestingly, I was also the first and so far the only bipartisan elected mayor of Westchester. Not sure that could happen today, but at the time, I was very proud of being the Democratic candidate and then winning the Republican primary as a write-in twice. And I have always been focused on bringing people together, diverse viewpoints to find good solutions and working together. So I was very proud of that. There are term limits in the borough of Westchester. So at the end of my second term, realizing I was term limited, I swore I would never run for the Pennsylvania House or legislature, but I wanted to continue serving. My life has been public service. I was a public school teacher and volunteer with an NGO at the UN focused on health and environment. And I said, how else can I continue serving? Well, the opportunity was running for the Pennsylvania House seat that was held by a 3-term Republican incumbent. So I said, all right, what I will do is do my best to serve the people in Harrisburg, but I will also still have my district where I know I can really be impactful, and I will continue some of the work I was doing as mayor. I was concerned about going to Harrisburg. People said, why do you want to go? You're going to beat your head against the wall. You can never get anything done. And I said, well, I'm going to be a voice, and I am presence, and I'm going to bring the voices of the people to Harrisburg, and I'm going to do everything I can to help move this cruise ship of a Commonwealth in a slightly healthier direction. And as Judy was saying, I think the women's presence and collective voices in the ways that the conversations have changed and the kinds of bills that we're seeing moving forward has a lot to do with those women. And Chris, I have to say and thank Represent. When I ran in 2016, you may all remember that was not a good year for Democrats. And I won my seat in the Pennsylvania House by 25 votes. Represent was a significant supporter to me, financially cheering me on, holding briefings and bringing people together. I do believe that I would not have found those 25 votes without the support that Represent gave me to help me talk to, and get those voters to the polls. So, and then of course, thank you, Represent, for supporting me when I ran in a 3-way primary for an open Senate seat. I came in at the last minute. The whole thing was a last minute thing. And you were very helpful. And in the 3-way primary, I won with 51% of the vote. So, so you have been so supportive and so helpful to me and many women. And when I first came into the House, you said, how is it different? I sat there with my executive hat on, right? The business owner, mayor, and I sat in the second row and I'm watching how things unfold. And I'm always thinking, how do we improve operations, right? And I said, okay, here's what I see. And I was asked at the Chester County Chamber of Business and Industry, why can't you people ever get anything done? And in the Pennsylvania legislature. And two men went before me and they said to a senator and a houseman, well, you know, this, that, and, you know, it's very difficult and all of that. And then I got up. I was the only woman pretty much in the room. And certainly in the delegation, and was the only Democrat in Pennsylvania that had flipped a seat in 2016, actually, in the legislature. So I said, well, I'm new in the House and I've been, you know, observing. And what I think is that, or what I observe is that there are too many old white guys from Pittsburgh running leadership on both sides of the House, the Republicans and the Democrats. And I said, until we have greater diversity, some women in leadership, I don't see operations changing in the Pennsylvania House. So that's where I see us needing to go. Well, Judy explained the makeup of the leadership and the Senate with women in leadership now and more women in the Pennsylvania Senate. In the House, when I was elected, there were 18% women in the Pennsylvania legislature. And you know what, Judy and Amanda, I don't know what that number is now, but it's double. And thanks to Represent in 2018, all the women in Chester County who ran for the House flipped Democratic seats and won. So now the delegation in Chester County is not all women, but mostly Democrats and women. So anyway, I worked in the House to change the leadership, to bring in people of color, women, and people from other parts of Pennsylvania, in particular southeastern Pennsylvania, where we have the greatest density of population and people we serve. So I was really proud to be a part of bringing people together to make those changes in the House. And I'm so delighted to be in the Senate and working with Judy and Amanda. Judy and I are roomies. Our offices are in the same space, and we sit next to each other on the Senate floor. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, for a couple of stories that you told that reminded me of, I've told this story many times that when Madeleine Dean was first elected to the State House, she was told to be quiet and for the first few terms until she realized how things were done and she could get a feel for the way things moved and didn't move and what was important, and she should sit and be quiet for a few terms. Well, that's the same Madeleine Dean, her first term in the United States Congress, Nancy Pelosi put her on one of the impeachment committees. She didn't say, oh, go be quiet in the corner. So that's the difference in culture. One of the things I like to say about Represent and our effect and the reason to support women is our Democratic pro-choice women is that women were not given the proper seat at the table, and these kind of conversations could not happen before. And it wasn't just the Republicans, that the Democrats and Democratic leadership were fully complicit in what was going on. And we've had a lot of change in not only in the Southeast Pennsylvania, as Senator Comitta talked about, but also in Western PA. A number of the people in leadership in both chambers and in both Democrats and Republicans were the same kind of people, just on opposite ends of the party. The Allegheny County Dems, a leadership organization, was they supported several of them supported Trump for president, for example. They were, not my kind of Democrats. And one of the things that happened after the 2018 election is that instead of the Philadelphia delegation being by itself and the surrounding counties being by themselves and kind of pitting themselves against Western PA, they became a Southeast Pennsylvania delegation, which included Philadelphia and the surrounding counties, which gave them a lot more pull, a lot more. And that's the process by which Joanna McClinton was made minority leader and became speaker. And it's because of people working together, and it's because of the numbers of women that we elected that they decided that this is how we had to do it. So I appreciate your story from the inside, Senator Comitta, because we saw it from the outside. And now we bring up Senator Amanda Cappelletti, who was elected for the first time 4 years ago. When Senator Cappelletti ran in a primary against her, an existing state senator, which we tend not to support. Part of our policies that we love to support strong women, but if they're running against an existing Democratic senator in a primary, they better have a really good reason to do it, because we really want to flip the chambers. We want to elect more Democrats, and we want to get away from infighting and more towards the bigger picture. But Senator Cappelletti was, very impressive, and also this was a necessary flip. So we're so proud to have you, Senator Cappelletti, today.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate being here with all of you who are supporting Represent. That really was a huge backing in helping to get me into the state Senate.
So tell us about what you're working on and what it's like being in the state Senate, finishing your first term.
Wow. So what am I working on, and what is it like in the state Senate? Those are two really big things. I try to be really active in terms of policy. I am a lawyer with my master's of public health. That's my background. I will tell you, I never did that with the aim of practicing law. I've always really enjoyed policy, and that is where my heart led me into some policy positions, both working for Governor Tom Wolf and then in the advocacy space, as Chris mentioned, with Planned Parenthood. And while I was with Planned Parenthood was when I got the call asking me if I would be interested in running for the state Senate. And fortunately for me, I have a partner and a husband who was all in from the moment I asked him. So we went with it, and I've kind of really held on to that reproductive health space for a very personal reason. As you heard Chris say, I'm the first person to give birth while serving in the state Senate. My little girl is 10 months old, and when it came time to start considering what would it look like when I actually gave birth, because that was, March of last year, budget hearings and going into the Senate into session to vote on a budget. What would all of that look like? What's the policy? So many people ask me, what's the maternity policy like in the Senate? There isn't one. Nobody's really contemplated that. And to be honest, when we are out sick, that, we don't have a sick leave policy necessarily. We're all kind of our own bosses. So, I was fortunate in that Republican leadership did very much work with me in the same way they've worked with some of my male colleagues who have gone out for surgery and things like that. And have been incredibly supportive of my journey, which has not been an easy one to become a mother. I just can't convince them that everybody in the Commonwealth deserves that same level of support, not just me because I'm a senator. And that's really what my focus is. A lot of my focus is when it comes to legislation, not just reproductive health, which took on a whole new meaning when I found out during last session or last year's 2 years ago's gubernatorial race that I was going to have a little girl. It was always something important, but it really hit home when I was thinking about my daughter. And if it wasn't a governorship hero, what did that mean for me, and what did that mean for her? And where I would choose to raise her, to be quite frank, I really didn't know what that would look like. It was a scary thought. Thankfully, that didn't come to fruition, and we are in a situation with a governor who stands with us in reproductive health and protecting those rights. So very fortunate about that, but I continue to help drive that conversation with the support of Judy, who is my co-chair in the Women's Health Caucus. We do a lot of work together, whether it's talking, Judy does a lot for WIC and bringing attention to the issues of the Women and Infant and Children program. I forget exactly what all it's called. It's a really important program that provides supports for new mothers and infants when it comes to breastfeeding, supports, food support, formula, diapers, all of those things. It's so incredible. And we do a lot of that work together, a lot of the work to protect reproductive health. But I also had difficulty becoming a mother. I suffered 2 miscarriages. And I have the freedom in this job to take the time off that I need to both grieve and heal physically, because a miscarriage is also a very traumatic physical thing that happens to you. Not nearly enough people have that same support in this world, in this Commonwealth. And, I have legislation to help provide that with paid leave for pregnancy loss. Talking about looking at ways to improve access to lactation consultants, a lot of different things that are really in that space. And then I also do things that I really feel supported by my constituency. I'm in Montgomery and Delaware counties, and I know I have a couple of constituents here that tell me, fight for the environment. That's just so important. It's critical. It's an existential crisis. So I do a lot of work there and work with Senator Comitta on that, as she's the chair, as you said, of the Environmental Energy and Resources Committee. And those are the things I really strive to focus on, is things that are going to impact women and families, reproductive health, and a lot of environmental stuff. There are a few other things like gun violence prevention and things like that, but those are really the big things that I've taken on as a state senator.
Well, thank you. And one of the things that you've talked a little bit, each of you have talked, first of all, Amanda, you wove the theme of reflective democracy into what you're talking about, because don't you think that it helps that if people are turning around and want to talk about childbirth, they better not, and support of women and children, they better have you as part of that conversation. And it's just adding a different flavor to all of these things. And
Chris, I'll jump in there just real fast to
please.
even know, and without sharing any of my colleagues' stories, I will tell you that there are male colleagues that, after I shared on the floor of the Senate about my miscarriages, every October I introduced legislation to recognize October as Infancy and Pregnancy Loss Awareness Month. The first time I did that, I had several male colleagues come up to me from both sides of the aisle to share their stories of what happened to their wives. So this isn't something new to them. It's just not a conversation that was happening in the Capitol building because they wouldn't have thought to have it before.
Exactly right. They wouldn't have thought to have it before. You gave them permission to have that conversation. You told them that it was okay. When I first came up in business, you were told so many things you weren't allowed to talk about because it would make men uncomfortable because there weren't other women in the roles that I had. You gave them permission to talk about these things. And isn't that wonderful? So let's go back to one of my comments earlier on. Okay, so I know of, I've got the list of over 200 bills that are waiting for you. Let's start again with Senator Schwank. You're not in charge of the Ag Committee. If you were in charge of the Ag Committee, are there any of those bills you'd like to see, or what would be the theme of your conversations? Because you're not the one deciding what the agenda is in that committee.
I may not be the one who's deciding what we're doing, but believe me, I am outspoken in terms of what our conversation needs to be. One thing I've learned, while you're not in the majority, you do have the opportunity to speak up and say what you need to say. But in terms of what I'd like to see happen, one is most certainly the types of agricultural production methodology that supports climate smart agriculture. Other states around us are doing amazing work in terms of linking conservation of soil and water and air, air quality to the types of farming practices that we're using. So certainly that would be part of it. I would be enhancing the funds that we're using for small scale agriculture and rural agriculture. Pennsylvania has changed dramatically in terms of agriculture and what our farming population looks like. And by the way, we are like #1 in food processing in terms of the entire United States. So we have a lot of things that we could be capitalizing on, but we don't. We kind of, right now, a lot of the legislation is just kind of waiting, for us to take action. Another thing that we would do, and I was on a dairy farm, so I have a perspective that's somewhat different than some of my colleagues in the Senate Democratic Caucus. I do have that rural and agriculture experience. That was my career and also my livelihood. And you may not realize it, but right now, every single one of you, every time you buy a gallon of milk, you're paying 8 cents a gallon to help support farmers. Problem is, the money isn't getting out to farmers in an equitable way. So one of the things that I'm working on right now, and it's been tough because I kind of have to do this behind the scenes, is trying to get that equity available to our farmers. But yes, agriculture is a big part of what I do. But as Amanda mentioned, I am not only co-chair of the Women's Health Caucus, I'm the co-founder. When I came in to the Senate, there was no discussion on these issues. Nothing, nothing, not in the House and not in the Senate. So we were able to find colleagues in the House at that time, Representative Dan Frankel, who now I think does chair the Health Committee in the House. We started that effort. And I'm very, very proud of the fact that we were able to beat back, a constitutional amendment that the Republicans were trying to push forward that would put the issue of abortion on, in our Constitution, but not defining it as a right, as trying to say that it's not a right. Well, it was just a backdoor way of trying to eliminate the opportunity that abortion is illegal in the Commonwealth right now. And so we were able to beat that back. They don't talk about that any longer. That is not, on the agenda. So I work in a whole, range of different spaces, but definitely, if we were able to chair these committees, those 200 bills that are waiting would likely be on the agenda as soon as we could. But what I hope, and I wanted to say this, I think this is important. If we're fortunate enough to get those 3 seats so that we can start driving the agenda, we need to, have a summit with our House colleagues and talk about what are our priorities, where are we going first, and make sure every movement that we make in terms of legislative initiatives follows with what the people of Pennsylvania are interested in at the moment. And so we can show Democrats can govern and will govern well and better. And so I'm looking forward to that. And believe me, I will make sure I'm at the table when we start talking about what that kind of a majority looks like for us in Pennsylvania.
You
I got
just
lots of plans.
You just about have me in tears, both for the amount of work you're doing from the minority end of pushing things to get them done and the idea of working across the whole organization. I tell everybody, Michigan is my goal. The trifecta in Michigan, they've got a very narrow House and Senate majorities now and a fabulous Michigan governor. And they're getting all kinds of things done because they're working together. And guess what? The senior roles between the governor and many of the major roles in her administration are all women. And I guess that I must admit that's part of my goal. But anyway,
Could she be our next president?
when she starts campaigning here, I will, remind everybody I was born in Michigan. So, maybe. So Senator Comitta, you've talked about being on the Environment Committee, the Environment Committee.
Yes.
What would you like to see done? Are there things that the House has already done that you'd like to see hearings on in your committee? And how much influence can you have from the minority side?
Well, as Senator Schwank was saying, I speak out against the bills that Senator Yaw is the majority chair there. And there are, regular opportunities for me to speak out against the bills that he may be bringing forward. But what I have found, again, with my hope to bring people together to find some sort of common ground, bipartisan collaboration is very difficult these days, not impossible. But for example, last year, the majority chair kept bringing up bills against the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. And I said, okay, we are never going to agree on this. I believe the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative is one of the very important steps that Pennsylvania needs to take to reduce our full 1% of the world's carbon emissions. And so I said, we're never going to agree on that. You know where I stand on that. I know where you stand on that. But I said, what do we agree on that we could bring forward in this committee? I said, how about your bill on Growing Greener 3? How about your bill on clean streams? And don't you know, the next Environmental Resources and Energy, ERE, committee meeting, those two bills were on the agenda. I said, let's find something we all agree on, these good ideas, and let's move these forward. We don't need to be arguing about things all the time. So anyway, and they passed, not quite unanimously. There were a couple of Republican votes against them, but okay, they passed with all of the Democrats on the committee supporting. So I am able to, and I have spent a lot of time building a relationship with the majority chair and my executive director of the committee, my policy director, and his talk together regularly. And I said to my policy director, all right, that worked. Let's just keep seeing where we have common ground, what bills are sitting out there that the majority chair hasn't brought forward that we would support that are good bills. So anyway, that's where I am right now as the minority chair and how I navigate that. Speak out and also try and find some common ground to move bills forward. And that's been successful where I sit today. Were I the majority chair, what I would see, and of course, with the House and the majority as well, bills like we have companion bills in the House and in the Senate that reflect the recommendations of then Attorney General Shapiro's grand jury on fracking, and many suggestions for how to make that safer, whether it's setbacks from schools and homes and places where people live and work, the types of chemicals that are being used and testing for those chemicals, sharing what the chemicals are that are leaching in many cases into local water supplies, wells, and so on. So there's the whole fracking bill. I would, well, we'll see right now that the regional greenhouse gas emissions is in the before the Supreme Court, and we will see what they say, if in fact it is something that is legal and able to be moved forward. So fingers crossed on that.
Somebody
yeah.
asked us a question about global warming and said that sounds like, or she just read an article that more Republicans than in the past are acknowledging that global warming
Yes.
is a thing. Do you find that on your committee that that they're agreeing with you that it is a thing?
Yes,
It's just
absolutely.
how to go about it.
Yes. So yes, when I was in the House and my first year in the Senate, first 2 years in the Senate, we were still debating if global warming, climate change was a real thing. And, you just, and I said, we don't have time to debate this anymore. We don't have any reason to, but that's what the conversation was. Last year, the conversation shifted from is global is global warming and climate change real? Republicans started acknowledging the reality of climate change, but what the debate switched to was how we address it.
Right.
And so where the solutions lie. The Republicans are still saying natural gas is the cleanest and it's the bridge and, all of that. Renewable energy, isn't reliable, isn't, there's never going to be enough of it. And so there's a lot of debates there. Now, of course, we're moving into hydrogen. The Republicans, from what I have seen, are very interested in the hydrogen hubs. What they are not interested in is the details of the regulation, the types of hydrogen hubs. From what I have learned, I'm still learning. We're all still learning. It's very new. What we need are green hydrogen hubs, the blue hydrogen hubs that would be fueled by natural gas would be producing the emissions, the carbon emissions that we are trying to eliminate. So there are a number of things that I am learning that I believe I and the Democrats would support, that would be specifically supporting green hydrogen.
That's great.
Yeah, but reducing the reason that one of the big reasons that I decided to run for the House and now the Senate is my passion for protecting the environment and protecting people and ecology. So that's really why I'm here, and that's why I'm really honored and delighted that I'm the chair of the Environmental Resources Committee. There are so many things that we can do. The AEPS, the Alternative Energy Portfolio Standards, that ran out, that say what percentage of energy that's produced in Pennsylvania needs to be renewable and certain kinds of renewable. That ran out. So right now there is no requirement for anybody to do anything in the renewable world. Things are changing because there is money to be made in clean energy. People see we are in what I now hear in my committee all the time, the great transition. The great transition to clean energy. That first came up last year as a term, and it is now shaping the conversation in the committee.
No, thank you.
Solar for schools, electric vehicle build out, all of these things, building up the DEP staff, Department of Environmental Protection. They are not up to par for the task at hand.
Right.
We need the money. If the Democrats were in the majority in the legislature, both houses, all these things would be moving forward, and climate change would be real, and we would be reducing our emissions at a much higher rate than we're seeing now.
Well, a number of the comments that you made remind me of one of the reasons that being in the majority allows you to bring these bills up, which
Yes.
forces people to go on the record with how they feel about it.
That's
A
right.
very simple one is minimum wage. And there is one of your Senate colleagues from the county of Erie who likes to post a lot about a Republican colleague about we should be raising minimum wage. This is ridiculous that minimum wage is still so low. But we also know that the Republicans in the Senate have not brought up the bills to do this. And I want people, rather than posting about these things on Twitter or whatever they want to, social media, what we need to do is get people the right to vote and get people on the record as to how they feel about these things. Hey, Senator, before I come to Senator Cappelletti again, Senator Schwank, I know you want to say goodbye to us, and I know you have a 9:30 event that you have to leave your car for. So thank you for joining us, and any parting words about, and do you want to say some inspiring things to us about why we need to raise more money so that we can increase the number of Democrats and increase the number of women in your caucus?
Absolutely, I am. First of all, thank you everyone for your participation. Represent has made a huge difference in terms of my campaign and so many other women. And look where we're at, where 3 members could make a huge difference. This is the time for us to put a push on like we never have before. And I know that I'm mentoring and working with candidates both in the House and hopefully in the Senate as well, to ensure that we can make that difference. We've come so far. Let's not stop here and continue to go on. Thank you all, for everything that you've done, whatever you've contributed. You're making a difference. Look at these amazing colleagues I'm talking with today. We can do more. So please, let's just keep working to make that happen, including that minimum wage issue you were talking about.
Just put it on, just let people vote on it. Let's see who's
Exactly. We could do it. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
So, Senator Cappelletti, you're on the government committee. What would you, as chair of the committee, what would you do?
We would be fixing the mail-in voting law, Act 77. That would be top priority, because what we have right now is Republican and Democratic counties begging us for pre-canvassing. What this means is right now, as it stands, I think most of you probably know this, but for those who don't, when we send our mail-in ballots in, it sits in that little envelope at the county facility, wherever they tuck it away at, in its envelope, inside its secrecy envelope, folded up, until Election Day. So counties have thousands upon thousands of these that they have to open one envelope, inspect the secrecy envelope, make sure everything's good there, open the next envelope, check the ballot, flatten it out, run it through. That takes forever. Pre-canvassing means that they would be able to start that process of opening envelopes, not counting necessarily, could include counting if we wanted to in the bill, and I'd be open to compromise on that, because even just the process of opening and making sure all of the different pieces are okay when it comes to whether the secrecy envelope was filled out correctly. We know there's a lot of questions about, the dating and the signature and whatnot. Then opening up the ballot, make sure that's all good and everything's filled out right there. That process takes such a long time. We're not getting enough people number one, to help that process go faster, but also it's a tedious process that also requires a lot of machines within that process too. So if we can start even half of that earlier, we could come back to a scenario where we have our results on election night without question. So that would be
common sense.
We know that this works because the numerous other states that have mail-in balloting, because there are so many, already do this. Ohio does this, and we had a whole conversation with Ohio about things as part of my role in state government committee and what we did there. I would change laws. This is going to get real into the weeds here for you guys a second, but I think it's really important to understand in Pennsylvania, the problem with our voting rolls isn't voter fraud or anything like that, is that it takes up to 7 years for somebody to be removed from our voter rolls if you don't actively do it yourself. So there is a way to take some of the data that we get from ERIC, which is a system that many states are all bought into. It's a nonprofit system, data system that's closed off, that it blinded out. We can't get certain people's information, and states can't get our people's information, but it gets information to make sure that somebody is not registered to vote in both Pennsylvania and New York or wherever they might move to, right? Or if somebody died when they moved to another state and they haven't been taken off their voter rolls here in Pennsylvania, it's a good way to cross-check. Right now, we can get that information, we can see it, but counties can't actively use that information to clean up their voter rolls. It just sits there. We know it
By
exists.
state law, they can't access it?
By state law.
It-
By state law. So we need to change our state law to better utilize the systems we have in place to clean up our voter rolls. It's not that our voter rolls are bad. It's just messy. It's overgrown. It's, we can weed it down, so to speak, right? And make it easier. Those are two really big things that I would want to get done, as well as clarifying within the mail-in balloting laws about, the signature and the dating and things like that, and the receipt dates, and, those little nuances that have been going through the court systems that are driving us all crazy. Let's just clarify exactly what we need to clarify in that law. That should be an easy fix. You know what I mean? Like, we know that these are going through the systems, we're fighting about it. So like, let's just say what we mean and put it into the law. Make the amendment now. It shouldn't be that hard.
And I know that both of you senators are making your lists of what your committees are going to look like when we get to 50%, and we just got to keep working on it. One thing I'd like to do right now, I just want to call on Tara Probst for a minute. We're very lucky to have one of our elected state reps who called in, not because I'd ask her to speak today, but just because she wanted to hear from these wonderful senators. Tara, do you want to say good morning?
Yeah, good morning. And of course, I wouldn't miss this. And I mean, I don't know how they sit over there in that Senate. I would lose my mind. And I know that they are ambitious and hardworking and are doing everything they can to push the agenda that the House has done. I mean, we have over 204 bills sitting in the Senate right now, from funding public education to stopping the cyber charter thievery, putting money back in Pennsylvanians' pockets. When you have better schools, you have better communities, you have safer streets, you have people with more money in their pocket because they're getting educated. It all really starts at these basics. And I mean, these senators are awesome. And I'm telling you, I would lose my mind over there, because I feel like all the majority in the Senate wants to do is not have progress. They think the status quo is fine, and it's not. It hasn't been working. It hasn't been working for nearly 2 decades. So there's so many House bills, even what Senator Cappelletti was talking about. We passed the pre-canvassing in the House. It's sitting over there. It makes sense. And now that the House has a majority, and we passed women's rights, Melissa Schusterman and Mary Jo Daley, of course, I co-sponsored these to protect women, to protect the doctors, to protect people who come from out of state, for women's health care. We know it's never going to see the light of day, but what we've been doing is now everyone else knows what the House is doing. And we think that's going to help flip the Senate, especially for women. So someone like Patty Kim, she needs to get in that Senate and she needs to make her mark, because my senator is Rosemary Brown, and she voted for the heartbeat bill. Basically, this is what I'm dealing with in Monroe County. I'm just listening, and it's very frustrating because we have so many bills that you're talking about that are sitting over there, and they will never see the light of day. And yet these people keep getting elected. So I'm a person of dissent. When someone is not right, I dissent, and I dissent in the newspaper, and I dissent on the radio, and I dissent on the TV cameras, and I tell everybody why it's wrong. And until we start dissenting more and being loud and proud about our views, it's not going to change in the Senate. And, what I'm finding is the Senate and the House, they definitely operate in 2 different ways. We are fighters and scrappers and get it across and tell everybody our policy points. We put them out there. And we just need more women in the Senate that understand real life, education, women's issues. And until that happens,
we got it.
Senator Schwank, Cappelletti, Comitta, I can't imagine the frustration that you all have, because it's just got to tear you apart on what's not getting done over there. So I
Thank
feel for you. I'm going to do everything I can to help flip the Senate. And thank you, Represent, for everything you've done to help me and the Senate. And I just want you to know I support these senators and all their initiatives, and I'm with them 100%.
Thank you. And this is the kind of thing we want to see: bipartisan, bicameral work. We want to see working across the aisle, but we need to have a way of getting people on the record as to how they feel about these bills. And we share, Senator Schwank had to leave us today, but Senator Comitta and Senator Cappelletti, thank you so much for being on. You've energized me as to the value of the work we're doing and the wonderful work that the women that we've supported are doing in Harrisburg. I'm so infinitely proud of the work that we all have been able to do because of the money we've raised. And thank you for your work. And let's get you into the majority. Now let's go on to our final slides, please. We have already started handing out some monies, and all three of the senators that you've seen today have all received money from us so far this year. Our policy has been that in December, before an election year, we like to give early money to incumbents just so that they have the money in the bank for their final reporting at the end of the year, so nobody can think about running against them, and to give them a good start towards their election campaigns. We invested $78,000 this month of the money that you have all helped us raise, both in incumbents, and we decided that since we've supported Patty Kim for so long in her House races, that we would give her early money in her Senate race as part of this process. She's running for a Senate seat in the Harrisburg area. The incumbent dropped out of the race, so it's considered an open seat, and we don't expect her to have a primary, or if she does, it's not against anybody we're worried about. And we would just love to increase our numbers in the Senate, both in the number of Democrats and in the number of women. Right now, we're back at a 101 to 101 in the House. There's a special election coming in February for a Bucks County seat to bring that back up again to the Democrats having the majority. But we keep going into this situation that every time a Democrat this case, the Democrat dropped out because he was elected to a judgeship. So we need to get a bigger majority so that we're not going through this all the time. The Senate, we've talked about the numbers. Represent has raised enough money already this cycle to cover all of our expenses. We're almost all volunteers, but we do have to pay for, we have a director of operations, and we have expenses on our website and things like that. But all of those expenses for this cycle are always already covered. Every dollar we raise is going to go towards candidates to make a difference. It'll go towards new candidates because we need a bigger majority in the House, and it'll go towards flipping some additional seats so that we can make a difference. Senator Maria Collette has talked about one of the values to her of Represent is that an awful lot of our donors, most of our donors, are not people who've ever given to state House or state Senate races. It's new money to these kind of campaigns because women like you and donors like you have not been involved in Pennsylvania legislative races. It just didn't occur to people to do. And we've been able to pull through our programs of civic education, we've been able to help people to understand the value of what goes on in Harrisburg and elect more people like the ones that you're seeing on this call. We invested almost $700,000 last cycle. We've already only done 78 in new money plus a few dollars in special elections this year. We got a long way to go to raise enough money to equal last cycles. Next slide, please. We always could use volunteers. Look at the wonderful, and one of the fun things is look at the people you get to be with. You get to be with women like the ones on this call. You get to know these senators. You get to know people involved. You get to be involved in all these things. You get to know that you made a difference. And thank you very much. And was there anything else? Support us. So again, thank you to our, Tara, did you have, I see your hand up. Did you have
Oh,
another?
I just wanted to let you know, we are 101 to 100. There was
Oh.
gentleman, House of Representatives that was, we knew this in December. He was deployed into
That's right.
Africa for 6 months. So we're 101 to 100 right now, still.
Okay. Yeah. Still too close. Still way too close, but thank you for the fact check for me. So again, thank you very much, Senators Cappelletti and Comitta. We were thrilled to be able to send you money in December to make sure you know that we love you and we support you. We need you to continue doing good work, and we need you to continue telling people how valuable it is to support Represent. We also know that the both of you are going to be out there because we've got, I know it, we've got other Senate candidates. Mackenzie White, are you still on? I know
Hi,
we,
yes, I'm here.
okay, Mackenzie White is running for the, if Jim Brewster does retire, she's running for that seat. And so I know she'll be calling both of you. I've encouraged her to reach out to current senators to make sure that she's getting all the election advice that she can, so that if that race goes forward, that she's got our support. Oh, Jim Brewster just announced his retirement?
Yes, last night, this morning.
Okay. So we know of at least one candidate for that race, and she'll be reaching out to get support from other women and other senators. So thank you very much. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for, let's continue to make change in Pennsylvania, and have a great start to the new year.